Exploring alternative approaches to mental health, it is first important to understand what mental illness actually is.
I ended up repressing all my emotions. And when a trigger happens, something emotional happens, something traumatic happens, it brings up things that have not been processed, which is brought on and worsened by lack of sleep. And I'm viewing the world as like a 3-year-old. So everybody around me is scary and big and loud.
I don't view it as a disturbed state. I actually view it as like a very blissful state, which sometimes I don't come out of, like I don't want to choose to come out of. But then, when I don't respond to people, it's concerning.
It was one of the most profound experiences of my life, and I felt like I was making a really important change and having epiphanies and discoveries, and I was. but no one was there to listen or to affirm that.
Most psychiatric survivors reject the term mental illness altogether, as it supports what is considered the medical model of mental health.
I've read a lot about these diagnoses, and I've come to the conclusion that I am a human being.
These are human experiences, and a big part of the problem has been this thing of, well, there's this and there's this, and you're this or you're that. You're sick or you're well.
The problem with the term mental illness is that it sounds like you're talking about an illness that is essentially physiologically based. It is caused by some kind of brain disorder or infection or chemical imbalance or genetic problem. Mental illnesses really are illnesses in the sense that they make it very difficult for people to function. But they're also much more than that. Mental illnesses are wake-up calls. They're signals that we need to do some work on ourselves, or we need to change our lives or change ourselves.
The medical model is based on the idea that there is a physiological impairment creating a neurochemical imbalance in a person's brain, resulting in a mental illness. Despite this popular perspective, it is based on flawed science.
This leads us to the chemical imbalance theory. Researchers start to understand how the drugs act on the brain. So, for example, they understand that antipsychotics block dopamine receptors because they induce Parkinsonian-like symptoms, which is caused by a deficiency of dopamine. So they hypothesize maybe schizophrenia is due to too much dopamine. Similarly, when they investigate the first antidepressants, they find what those drugs do is they keep serotonin or norepinephrine longer in the synaptic cleft between neurons, theoretically upping this activity of what are known as monoamines. So they say maybe depression is due to too little of these neurotransmitters. The point is, watch the history go here. We have a discovery of drugs because of their adverse effects. We next discover that, in fact, they do perturb normal functioning. They're blocking dopamine receptors, or they're blocking the normal reuptake of serotonin. And then we make the grand leap, I'm talking about psychiatry, well, maybe the problem is the opposite of the perturbation the drugs are doing. So they hypothesize the pathology based on what the drugs do. So we say, depression is due to too little serotonin. Well, what's the next step in this investigation? You have to find, do people with depression have too little serotonin before they go on the drug? And as early as the late 70s, early 80s, they were not finding that to be so. By the early 90s, we had schizophrenia researchers saying the same thing, is we're not really seeing that a lesion in the dopamine system is a primary cause of schizophrenia. And this, I think, is so key. It's sort of a wishful thinking on the part of psychiatry that its drugs are fixing some known pathology. Then they investigate whether that's true. They actually do not find it to be so. And now here's the moment of truth. Are they going to tell the public that? Or are they going to maintain this story about chemical imbalances, which makes their drugs look very good and makes it also look like they're making such great strides in understanding the biology of mental disorders? So which do they choose?
God, I wish it was chemical imbalance. I wish I could take a Celexa and lithium. I wish a doctor or a psychiatrist could have the courage, the humility to say, we don't know, and I don't know. I'm sorry, I wish we did. Don't tell me that there's something wrong with me if you don't know that that is wrong with me.
To deny the biological basis of mental illness is not to deny that people are experiencing emotional, psychological, and at times even physical distress. So what exactly is going on? Many factors play a role.
Mental illnesses are caused by what a person is experiencing and their reaction to what they're experiencing. So problems in life, really it's about emotional distress, life crises, difficult dilemmas, spiritual emergencies, overwhelm, fear, that kind of thing. If you believe in the biological explanation, you really believe that human beings don't have any control over the faculties that they use to live their lives. You believe that human beings don't have control over their thoughts, their emotions, their intentions, their perceptions, their reactions, their behavior. Most human beings, the great majority, in order to be mentally healthy, they have to be able to love the way they want to love and express themselves the way they want to express themselves. They want to be connected to other people in satisfying ways, all kinds of love, romantic love, sexual love, family love, collegial love, friendship, all kinds of connections. And then they want to be able to express themselves. They want to be able to use their abilities. We have these amazing abilities, to use our minds to solve problems, to make decisions, to build things, to create art. And if they can't do that, they're going to become agitated, angry, debilitated, down, depressed, obsessive.
The mental health system has developed this idea that mental illness often starts around college age, instead of saying, it's a really stressful time when kids leave home for the first time and are trying to figure out if they can make it in these other environments. And sometimes they might go through some pretty profound periods of distress when that's going on.
You, I, we all know that our moods, our thoughts, that we're sort of creatures that respond to our environment, which includes, by the way, sleeping, it includes eating, but it also includes, are we in a world where we have someone to love, some meaning, safety, or are we in a perilous world where we don't know people we can trust, even the people we should trust aren't very trustworthy?
Just asking why and just thinking about the contextual factors that might bring someone to be feeling very distressed and feeling like they want to end their life, whether passively or actively, feeling like not existing might be better than existing. Like, that's a big thing to say, and it takes a lot of factors to get there.
According to the late psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas Szasz, our adversaries are not demons, witches, fate, or mental illness. We have no enemy whom we can fight, exorcise, or dispel by cure. What we do have are problems in living.
We don't have the proper education on how to deal with emotions. I mean, my grandma died and I don't remember anybody talking to me about it. She was my best friend. I didn't process that. I was like 12, I was 8 years old. I mean, I went to the funeral and I don't remember anybody ever grieving or talking about grief or saying, it's okay to cry or anything.
If you've suffered a lot of adverse childhood experiences, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, poverty even, a parent dying, a parent going to jail. If you suffer those kind of adverse experiences, you're much, much more likely to become mentally ill than people who haven't. None of us lives a really perfect early life. Our parents can't do that. They have their lives to live. They have their hang-ups.
Early childhood trauma for me, in my experience, was not being believed was part of my family dynamic. It was like there was a alternate world. There was a world of abuse happening and a world where, you go to school and everything's all right and, family dinners and people don't acknowledge the abuse that's happening.
I had a lot of things happen to me when I was younger. I was raised in a very strict religion. A lot of my trauma happened when my parents divorced, which was against the religion, and we were excommunicated. And at age 12, I was brought into mainstream society after having such a very strict background, coming into the world of anything goes. When things happened to me, I didn't process them. I didn't know how to process feelings and emotions. I didn't know how to process trauma. and things would happen, and I would suppress them using alcohol and other substances.
I think the manic episode and a lot of these psychoses are that stuff releasing. It's like a spiritual vomiting, or detoxing. When you get it out, it's out of your system, but it doesn't look normal.
All my altered states have been a combination of a whole lot of stress plus unresolved trauma, and that unresolved trauma piece is huge.
Evidence also shows that lack of good nutrition may be a source of what people call mental illness. Research into the gut-brain connection reveals that food we eat can alter our behavior. Many also view their experiences not as an illness, but as a process of spiritual emergency. This perspective has gained widespread attention through Sean Blackwell's YouTube video series, Bipolar or Waking Up.
What I went through most closely aligned with spiritual emergence, and I would have wanted the doctors and nurses to know what spiritual emergence is.
I was reading some books on spirituality and spiritual experiences, one of which was called Conversations with God. And a lot of the stuff in that book resonated with me, like, oh wow, that happened to me in my experience. Like, this is like a very similar thing. So it kind of validated, okay, this may not be entirely psychosis. Maybe this is a spiritual experience.
I had what I would call, in the conventional language, a nervous breakdown. I choose to call it nervous breakthrough.
I like to say I've lived experience with going through vision quests, and there's a long history of indigenous people who have really valued these experiences.
There are clearly many perspectives on what mental illness is. In our next segment, we will explore alternatives to psychiatric hospitals during a crisis.